$183,000. That's how much I gave my parents over 11 years. Rent, groceries, medical bills, car payments. I never missed a single month. Not once. I skipped vacations. I turned down job offers in other cities. I built my entire life around being the child who showed up. Then the liar opened the will. And I watched my siblings' faces. They weren't surprised. They weren't confused. They weren't grieving in that moment. They were waiting. My brother glanced at my sister. She looked down at the table. And I just sat there, holding this single sheet of paper, reading my name in a paragraph I hadn't expected. I was the only one in that room who didn't know. The question that broke me wasn't what they'd done. It was how long they'd been planning it, and whether any of it had ever been real. I was never the flashy one, never the one with the biggest personality in the room. I was the reliable one, the one who called back within the hour, the one who showed up with food when someone was sick and didn't make a big deal about it. I worked in healthcare administration for most of my adult life. Decent pay, steady hours, nothing glamorous. I got married in my late 20s to a man who was just like me, steady, quiet, someone who believed that doing right by people was its own reward. We didn't take extravagant trips. We didn't drive luxury cars. We lived within our means because we had to, and because we genuinely believed that's what good people do. I was proud of that. I was proud of who I was. And for a long time, the thing I was most proud of was my family. My parents weren't wealthy. They never had been. My dad worked in manufacturing most of his life. My mom stayed home when we were young, then picked up part-time work when money got tight. There were 3 of us kids. I was the middle child, and somehow that made me the anchor. My older brother moved across the country in his 20s and built his own life. My younger sister married young and always seemed to be in some kind of financial chaos. I was the one who stayed close, geographically and emotionally. I genuinely loved my parents. My dad had this quiet dignity about him. My mom was warm in a way that made you feel chosen when she paid attention to you. I wanted to be near that. I wanted to be the kind of daughter they could count on. And for 11 years, I was. Every single month. Without fail. What I didn't realize was that being needed and being valued are not the same thing. Looking back, the signs were always there. I just explained them away because that's what you do when you love someone. The first time I noticed something strange was about 4 years into the payments. My mom mentioned offhand that she'd redone the will. I asked if everything was still equal between the 3 of us. She smiled and said, "Of course, sweetheart." She said it so easily, so naturally. I believed her completely. Then there was the Christmas my brother came to visit. He and my dad had a long conversation in the garage. When I walked in, they stopped talking. Dad clapped my brother on the shoulder and said, "Your sister works hard." It sounded like a compliment. It felt like something else. And once, just once, I overheard my mom on the phone saying, "She doesn't need to know yet." I asked her about it later. She said it was about a surprise birthday party. There was no birthday party. But I let it go. I always let it go. About 7 years in, things started to shift in ways I couldn't as easily dismiss. My dad needed a procedure, nothing life-threatening, but serious. I covered the out-of-pocket costs. Nearly $9,000. My brother sent a card. My sister called once. I was there every day for 2 weeks. Afterward, my mom threw my brother a birthday dinner and put together this whole photo wall of memories. I wasn't in most of the pictures. I told myself it was an accident. Then my parents refinanced their house. I found out through a neighbor, not through them. When I asked, my mom said they were just tidying up finances and changed the subject. I started to feel it, this low, quiet hum of something wrong. Like standing in a room and knowing the temperature has dropped, but not being able to find the open window. My husband noticed it too. He didn't push me. But one night he said, very carefully, "Have you ever actually seen the will?" I hadn't. Not once. My dad passed first. Then my mom, 14 months later. The second funeral was harder. Not just because of grief, but because of what came after it. We met at the lawyer's office 2 weeks after the burial. I remember the room. Dark wood. A water pitcher nobody touched. I sat between my brother and my sister, and I thought, this is the last thing we do as a family. The lawyer read through the formalities. Then he got to the distribution of the estate. The house, which my parents had refinanced twice in the last 5 years, had a reverse mortgage on it. There was almost no equity left. But there was a life insurance policy. A significant one. $310,000. I had not known it existed. My brother received 40%. My sister received 40%. And me. I received 20%. The lawyer paused. I think he expected me to respond. But I couldn't speak. Because 20% of $310,000 is $62,000. And I had given them $183,000. My siblings already knew the numbers. They'd known for years. I didn't explode. I wish I had. Instead, I went very, very still. We walked out of that office in silence. In the parking lot, my brother tried to be casual about it. He said, Mom and Dad just wanted to balance things out. You have a stable income. We needed more support over the years. I looked at him. I said I gave them $183,000. What did you give them? He didn't answer. My sister said they made their choices. It's their money. I said I helped them keep that money. I covered their costs for 11 years so they could hold onto that policy. Did you know? Did you know the whole time? She looked away. That was my answer. I called her 3 days later when I'd had time to think. She finally admitted it. They'd all known for at least 4 years. My parents had told them separately, one conversation at a time, and they had all agreed to say nothing, to let me keep paying, to let me keep showing up. The weeks after that were the darkest of my life. And I want to be honest about that, because people expect you to get angry and then get over it. That's not how it works. I lay awake going through every memory, every holiday, every phone call where my mom said she was proud of me. Was any of it real? Or was I just the funding source with a daughter's face? I stopped eating properly. I lost 9 pounds in a month. My husband held me together when I couldn't hold myself. I kept a spreadsheet, I don't know why, maybe to make it feel concrete. Every payment I'd made. Every month. 11 years of records. The total column at the bottom just kept staring at me. $183,240. I had given them my 30s. Not just my money. My choices. My geography. My time. I had engineered my entire life around people who had sat across from me at Christmas dinner, year after year, knowing. And said nothing. There was one morning, about 6 weeks after the will reading, where something shifted. I was sitting at that same kitchen table with the same untouched coffee, and I thought, I can grieve this forever, or I can decide what I'm actually going to do about it. I'm not someone who chases conflict. I never have been. But I am someone who understands documentation. I worked in administration for over a decade. I understood paper trails. I understood what records show and what they prove. And I realized something important. Every single payment I had ever made to my parents, I had receipts for. Bank transfers. Checks. Every single one. And I began to wonder, quietly, carefully, whether 11 years of documented financial support to elderly parents, made with a reasonable expectation of fair inheritance, was just a personal loss, or whether it was something the law might actually have something to say about. I hired an estate attorney. Not the one who'd read the will, a different one. My own. She was sharp, methodical, and she didn't waste words. I laid everything on her desk. 11 years of bank transfers, organized by year. Copies of checks. Records of the medical expenses I'd covered. A written summary of the conversations I remembered, including the one where my mother explicitly told me the estate would be divided equally. My attorney explained a legal concept I hadn't known existed, something called unjust enrichment combined with promissory estoppel. In plain terms, if someone makes you a clear promise that causes you to change your behavior and spend money, they, or their estate, can be held accountable. My case wasn't bulletproof. She told me that honestly. But it was real. And it was documented. For 2 months, I said nothing to my siblings. I came to family gatherings as though nothing had changed. I smiled. I made small talk. And underneath all of it, the clock was ticking. The letter arrived at my siblings' addresses on a Tuesday. I know because my attorney told me when she sent it. A formal legal notice. A demand letter asserting my claim against the estate for the documented financial contributions I had made under a reasonable expectation of equal inheritance. The demand was $74,380. That was the calculated shortfall between what I received and what an equal three-way split would have been, minus the $62,000 I'd already accepted. My brother called me within the hour. He was furious. He said I was tearing the family apart. I said the family tore itself apart. I'm just responding to it in writing. My sister called an hour after that. She was crying. She said she'd felt guilty for years. I told her guilt without action is just a feeling. 3 weeks later, after 2 rounds of negotiation through our attorneys, they agreed to settle. My brother paid $41,500. My sister paid $32,880. Together, $74,380. The exact number I'd asked for. Not a dollar more. Not a dollar less. I didn't need more. I needed what was mine. I don't have a relationship with my siblings anymore. I'm not angry about that. I've made peace with the fact that the family I thought I had was partly something I built in my own mind. And that's okay. Loving a version of someone that wasn't entirely real doesn't make your love less real. It just makes the loss more complicated. What I have now is clarity. I have my husband. I have a small circle of people who have never once made me feel like my presence needed to be earned. I used part of the settlement to take the trip I'd been putting off for years. It was quiet. It was beautiful. And I didn't feel guilty for a single second of it. Here's what I want you to hear. Documenting your generosity is not cynical. Protecting yourself legally is not cold. And knowing your own value, not what someone else assigns to you, is not arrogance. It's survival. The will told me what my parents decided. My own records told me who I actually was. If any part of this story felt familiar to you, if you've ever been the one who showed up, who gave, who stayed, drop something in the comments. I read them. And if this video moved you at all, please hit like and subscribe to Dossier Karma. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it means more than I can say. I'll see you in the next one.